Yeah, it's Mindset Café, we all about that mindset. Gotta stay focused, never settle for less. It's all in your head, how you think you manifest. So get ready to rise, cause we about to be the best. Gotta switch it up, gotta break the old habits. Get your mind right, turn your dreams into habits. No negative vibes, only positive thoughts.
What is up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Mindset Cafe podcast. It's your boy Devin, and today I wanted to cover a topic that I've talked to a few of members about, as well as I've talked to some other business owners, and they've dealt with this as well. So the topic is essentially how people can support your ambition and your goals and everything in the beginning when it's an idea, but that's when it's easy for them, right? Support is easy when it's just an idea, but it gets more complicated once you become a result. Once you start seeing success, once you start actually achieving your goals, that's where the dynamic of the relationship may start to shift. So that's what I want to kind of talk about today and dive into, because I know it is a real thing. I have seen it, I have faced it, and I know some members are facing it right now with their fitness journeys, them starting to see results, and their loved ones, essentially, your loved one can essentially, start to, kind of change the feel and not feel as supportive, and they may not even know that they're doing it, right? So we're going to dive in a little bit. So if you know that someone else is going through this as well and starting a new journey, and you've seen or talked to them and their frustrations with this happening, make sure you send this episode to them, right? Help them out as well, because them overcoming this will allow them to continue to grow, and it will show that you are a true friend, or you are a true person in their corner. So diving in to the topic, support can get complicated, like I said, when you are becoming the result. And if you've been building something, right, anything real with your body, with the business, right, your finances, your standards, right, you may have felt that shift already. If not, you may start to feel it. At first, everyone is excited for you. Then it starts working, right? And then the energy starts to change, right? Maybe it's not so loud or anything. It's usually subtle, right? And that's what I want to kind of dive in is, right, it's from the support aspect, right, to all of a sudden subtle sabotage, right, to all of a sudden now you're becoming a master of yourself and understanding what you need to do. Because this is where a lot of people start to lose momentum, not because the goal starts to get harder, or not because the work starts to become harder, but because that social pressure can get a little weird, right? It can get a little awkward, right? Or at least have you feel that it is. And now you start to change your standards, and you start negotiating your standards just to keep the peace, or keep the the homeostasis, the equilibrium normal in your circles, right? And I don't want that for you. So let's make this as easy as possible, right? I don't want you to get paranoid or anything, right? Just I want you to understand that there's some pattern recognition, and when you notice it, right, you just have to execute. That's it, right? And it's not so crazy, but this is what it normally looks like. Let's say in business, right? You tell your friends that you're thinking about starting something. You have this idea for a business, and they'll hype you up. They love the vision. They love the talk, right? They love the one day aspect, quote unquote. Then you actually launch it, and you get your first clients, or you get your first sales, and you start making money, and you stop being available all the time to them, right? Now all of a sudden it becomes, make sure that this is sustainable, or you've changed, or they can just go kind of quiet on you, or they'll start joking, they'll start joking about your business or your journey, right? And it may seem harmless, but it's that uncomfort for them, right? They'll start asking. The one thing that's like, if you do start a business, or your friend starts a business, don't ask for discounts, right? Main thing is you should be hyping them up for their success, right? But that's when you'll start to notice that all of a sudden they'll make jokes, or they'll start, want your service, but essentially only if they can get a discount, right? And that's not real support, right? And so let's dive in for the fitness, for example, right? You tell your spouse or significant other, right, that you're going to start losing weight or you're going to go on this fitness journey, and they support it. You know, they say they're proud of you, and then you start actually changing, right? And maybe they're not on this fitness journey. Your meals start changing, your schedule starts changing. Maybe you stop going out and drinking, or you'll go out, but you don't want to drink, right? And you don't want to have that late night food, right? That late night junk food or drive-thrus. And then all of a sudden, they want to have more date nights, right? They want more quote unquote cheat meals and more, hey, let's just do this once. And it's not because they're doing it with, ill intent or they're trying to sabotage you knowingly, but it's because the change that you're having in your journey changes the relationship or the habits that you guys normally used to do, right? And so your growth creates a new standard essentially. And not everyone adjusts smoothly, I would say, right? And that's the problem if it goes unspoken, right? People support the goal until the goal starts actually changing you into a better version of yourself, right? So putting the main point out there, right? The subtle sabotage is not always someone trying to ruin your life or ruin your goal. A lot of the times it's something like this. Your growth makes someone feel something they don't want to feel. And instead of dealing with that feeling, they try to pull you back into the normal that they know, right? Back to the old you, back to the old rhythm, and back to what feels safe for them. And so that's why this, episode matters on your journey, because if you can't hold your standard under that social pressure, you don't have a discipline problem, you have an environmental problem. And then you'll have it in even more like you do have a discipline problem, but with your environment, right? And you have a boundaries problem, right? So I want to try to help you fix both of those. And so breaking it down, like the people your circle or whatever, they don't struggle essentially with your potential. They struggle with your proof, right? Because potential is essentially inspiring, right? It sounds cool and it's, the dream, right? But then proof can be confrontational to the norm because proof removes excuses, right? If you're doing it, then it can be done. And that's great for secure people or mentally, emotionally mature people, right? But insecure people, your progress can feel like a spotlight, not on you, but on what they haven't done, or on what they keep postponing, or on what they keep trying to explain their excuses. So they get uncomfortable, right? And that discomfort leaks out, right? It leaks out through jokes, through doubt, through, availability or hanging out or whatever. It leaks out through quote unquote concern, right? And that's a big one. They come across as they're, I'm just concerned for you, right? It's like, no, you're not, right? And this is why you can't just listen to the words, but you have to watch the behaviors and you have to internalize it and be like, what is the real reason behind it, right? So subtle sabotage is essentially anything that consistently reduces your ability to execute on your journey or on your path, right? Not just once, but like consistently, right? It doesn't have to be yelling, right? It doesn't have to be a big loud thing with the person. It could be a pattern of just small habits that create erosion in your bridge to the new version of yourself, right? A comment that, let's say, that creates doubt right before you make a big move. A quote unquote fun plan that lands right when you planned to work on the task that needed to get done with the deadline, right? A guilt trip when you say no. A reaction, let's say, when you're locked in, right? And you said that you can't do something, and all of a sudden they're like, oh man, you changed, right? Or they give you a face, right? It's not always out of hate, right? Often it's out of pressure on them. So you have to understand the difference between real concern and what's sabotage, essentially, right? So the rule I kind of have on like separating the two is like you have to think of one moment is just a noise, but a pattern is a signal, right? Meaning that like one weird comment doesn't really mean anything, but if every time you take a step up and you level up and that same person tries to pull you towards their comfort, that's a signal. Okay, that's a pattern. If every time you get momentum they introduce doubt, that's a signal. If every time that you say I'm focused, I'm trying to I need to be locked in right now, or I can't because I really need to be in the zone, and they try to test the boundary, that's a signal. And so once you see the signal, you stop arguing with it. You respond with a new structure, a new game plan, right? And so the framework you can use essentially is 5 steps, right? So honestly, write this down if you need to. Pattern scan, right? Is this a pattern? Emotional check, boundary plan, sprint plan, environment upgrade, right? Meaning that this is how you stop getting dragged back into the old version of yourself. So first, that pattern scan, right? You're not asking, do they like me? You're asking, do they help me execute, or do they help me or try to distract me? Are they helping my execution, or are they weakening it? Simple, right? When you leave interactions with them, do they feel clearer or more confused? More focused or more scattered? More committed or more tempered, right? Or tempted, sorry. This isn't about judging people in your circle, essentially. It's just about protecting your outcomes, protecting your results, protecting your success. And outcomes don't care about your comfort or your social comfort or your circle's comfort. Your outcomes, your results only care about the reps that you did or did not do, right? So the second step, your emotional check, right? This is where most people start to fall off. They get emotional and start, writing stories in their own mind, right? He must hate me, or she's jealous. My spouse doesn't want me to win. Maybe, but maybe not. So the cleaner way to think about it is ask yourself these 3 questions on it. Like, what happened? Why am I telling this story about it? What story am I telling about it, right, to myself? And what's the next course of action, right? Because that story can be wrong, but the action still needs to be right. So staying loyal to the plan, even when your feelings are big feelings, right? You need to stick to the plan. Trust the plan, right? Third, for your boundary, right? Boundaries aren't just an attitude, right? You gotta think boundaries are the instructions. They are the guide to help you stay on path. They're clear, they're calm, they're specific. There is no emotion in it, right? So you don't set boundaries to control other people. You're setting boundaries to control access to you so that you can have control of your journey on your path to success, right? So the boundaries essentially control that access to not just you, but your time, your attention, and your schedule. If you don't control the access, other people will, I promise you. Your goals will pay for it. So the boundary script essentially you can use, let's say in business, like I'm in a build season right now. I'm not debating the plan, I'm just executing it. Another one is, I appreciate you. Look, I'm not taking business advice from other people who aren't doing business. Or look, I appreciate the advice, or I appreciate, reaching out. I'm really focused on this plan. I just need to see how this lands, right? With fitness, right? Let's say maybe with a spouse. Look, I want a date night with you, but I'm not doing a cheat meal tonight. I need to stick to my meals. I need to stick to my macros, right? So let's pick a place that fits my plan. Let's pick a date night that fits my plan, right? Or another one is, look, I'm locked in for the next 2 weeks. Like I want to really stick to this goal for the next 2 weeks and see what happens. After that, let's do a bigger date night, right? So you're letting them know, like, instead of just doing this little one, let's do it in 2 weeks, and we'll even do it even bigger, right? Right now, I'm just protecting this momentum I have, right? And so notice the tone, right? There's no anger. You're not lecturing, right? And there's no defense in it, right? You're just clarifying, right? Your boundaries are not meant to be a conflict, right? They're just supposed to be clarity. So the fourth step was the sprint, right? And so the sprint essentially is when you're under pressure, you don't need motivation, I would say. You need just a short, like just rules essentially for a short-term sprint, right? You're not setting rules for this marathon. It's a sprint, right? 7 days, 14 days, 3 days, whatever it is, right? That's it. Pick one, essentially, what is the distance or what is the amount of time? Pick 2 habits and just track, right? For example, 4 workouts, meal plan 5 days, steps every day, business, let's say 10 outreach messages a day, 2 sales calls a day, 1 piece of content a day for X amount of days, right? And so the rule for the sprint essentially is there is no negotiating inside the sprint. When you're sprinting, you are sprinting. You review it at the end, and then you don't renegotiate it daily, right? You don't analyze it daily. Like even for fitness, for example, like when I change someone's macros or change their meal plans, like they need to follow it for a minimum of a week. And the reason is they may step on the scale the next day and their body hasn't adjusted yet, and the scale might be up a little bit. And then they step on the next day and it might be down a little bit. And then the next day might be up a little bit more from when it was down. And it's just this yo-yo of up and downs. The net positive over the sprint should be that you're seeing results. So it should almost look like like a roller coaster, how it has highs and lows, right? Think of each high and low get a little bit less. So each high is lower than the first one, and at the end of the sprint, you should be less weight, more muscle, and less body fat than you started the sprint, right? That means it's working. But you don't want to check it every single day throughout. It's like just check at the beginning, check it at the end, and then analyze it. And the last one, your environment upgrade, right? So this is where your life changes fast, right? Stop trying to build a disciplined life inside of a comfort-based room, right? If your circle is normalizes excuses, your standards will start to feel too intense. The new ones that you set for yourself, right? So your standards need to be what feels normal to you. And so if you surround yourself with other people that normalize execution and striving to achieve your goals, then your standards will feel normal, right? So just upgrade your inputs, upgrade your rooms, upgrade who you surround yourself with, right? And that can mean that maybe you need to get a mentor, right? And I'm not saying divorce your significant other, but sometimes you have to lean on other people, right? And use the feedback. And so I know one of my trainers had talked to me about a conversation they had with a member, and this was essentially that, about the whole losing weight and all of a sudden the cheat meals and all that kind of stuff. It's like, you don't need to get upset about, to your spouse. It's sometimes you have to lean on other people in the gym, lean on the trainers, talk to the trainers and so forth, so that you can understand how to go through this process, right? Because if you have a community around you that is setting their goals high, you will set your goals high too, and you will feel that, like what you're doing is valid. You won't feel the guilt of someone that isn't trying to set those goals, if they're trying to put these boundaries on you, right? You're not searching for new friends. You're just building a new environment around yourself, because the environment decides what is normal. And what feels normal is what your default habits will be, right? So, for example, business, right? Your friends hyped up the idea, you're closing sales, and all of a sudden, your friends don't really reach out as much, or they're quote unquote worried, or every time you win, the win gets kind of like minimized. They're like, oh yeah, that's cool, that's awesome, right? And so, here's what you do. The pattern scan is, are they adding fuel or pulling you into doubt? Emotional check, right? You don't label them as like haters on your business or label the behavior, right? You go to your boundaries, right? You just limit what you share. And I've noticed this personally. That's why I'm kind of diving into this one, is like, you just limit what you share. You don't need to announce every move or every win, right? And then the sprint plan is just go quiet, execute for the next 2 weeks, right? Execute for the next week. right? And then the upgrade part for your environment is like spend time with people who talk in numbers and in actions, not in opinions. Like I've joined business masterminds. I've set my surroundings a little bit different who I spend time with, or majority of my time with, right? In that social setting. Some people want access to your old time, but they don't want to adjust to your new standards. And if you keep giving them the old access, your growth will slow or start to go the other way. And it's not their fault. It's your problem, right? It's the leadership of yourself, right? You lead yourself. So lead yourself, but better. It's the easiest way I could say it, right? So let's say fitness, for example. Your spouse wanted you to eat healthy. Now you're actually seeing some results, and they start pushing their comfort, right? More nights out, or more just this once, or more cheat meals. And again, don't villainize it or villainize them, right? But don't fold either. That's the biggest one. You don't need to fold to make, like, their uncomfortability with your success is not your problem. So you scan the pattern. Is this bringing you closer or pulling you off of your plan? Your emotional check is, what am I making this mean? And am I reacting or am I leading, right? So then you adjust your boundaries. Offer a connection without breaking the plan, right? That, like I said, hey, let's do this in 2 weeks, the date night in 2 weeks, and go even bigger, but I just need to be focused right now. And that's where your sprints come in, right? And that's the key. You don't need to choose between your relationships or your standards. You just need a little bit of structure. So you could try something like that. Like, let's do the date night, right? I'll eat before we go, and then we can grab something light. Or let's do a date night. I'm just letting you ahead of time. I'm not really doing dessert tonight. I know we normally do that, but if you really want it, like, by all means, I don't want you to not have it. But like, I just want to give you a heads up. And essentially, that is leadership of self, right? You're protecting the relationship with your significant other, but you're also protecting the momentum, right? For your sprint, you're telling them a timeline, right? 14 days, then I reassess, right? Or 7 days, then we can go on date night, whatever the case may be. People handle boundaries better when they're clear than when it just feels like there's a new version of you and there's no access to any leniency, right? So the environmental upgrade in this scenario, though, I would say, if you're the only disciplined person in the household, like, bring in some, like, outside structure, right? Maybe a group class, a coach, right? Accountability check-ins with a trainer, because the house doesn't have to be your only source of standards. Now, the part that nobody really says out loud is that, the sabotage that comes from the people you love, and it hurts, right? Because you don't want to see them that way, but you can't pretend it's not happening, or you will fold. You will shrink to downplay essentially their uncomfort or your success so that they're not uncomfortable, right? You start living essentially two versions of yourself, right? And a disciplined life, for example, like the two versions, like one, you're disciplined when you're alone, but softer and, not disciplined when you're around them. And that split is going to break you, right? You can't build a strong identity when performing this other version of an old version of you. So the growth essentially can change some relationships, hopefully for the better, right? Not because you became better than them, but just because your old version is a little bit different, and different exposes comfort. If someone can only love you when you're small, or only love you when you're, your old version, like, that's not love, right? It's just convenience. And if you don't, you don't need to argue with them about this, right? You just need to stop handing them the steering wheel on certain things. So sometimes you just need to essentially audit your circle, or audit the situations that like I'm kind of saying, right? But I would say, if I could give you one thing, right, is check your boundaries, set a sprint plan. That sprint window, right? Not for permission, but for accountability, right? And then maybe audit your environment, right? Maybe you need an environmental upgrade for yourself, right? Whether it's the gym culture, business community, a mentor group, accountability calls, something of that nature, right? Because you don't rise to your intentions, you fall to your environment. I'll say that again. You don't rise to your intentions, you fall to your environment. You fall to your training, you fall to your habits. So I'll close with this, right? You don't need everyone to understand your season, what season of your journey you're in. You need your results to reflect your season. You don't need a universal support person or group. You just need consistent execution. And if support turns into subtle sabotage, right? You don't need to panic. You don't get mad. You don't need to spiral, right? Just scan the pattern, check your emotions, set the boundaries, run a sprint, and then upgrade your room. That's it. And that's how you keep growing even when the room gets uncomfortable, right? So if this hits you, take one exercise and just do it today. Not tomorrow, but today. Because momentum is built by action, not insight, right? The insight helps you take action, right? So keep building, stay disciplined, and protect who you are becoming. Again, I say that again, protect who you are becoming. I believe in you. You need to believe in yourself. So if you know someone that's going through this, make sure you send this episode to them, okay? But I appreciate you guys for tuning in and for sharing the show. If you guys ever need anything, you can always reach out in DMs, right? You can DM the Mindset page. You can DM, my Instagram as well. But I'm here to help any way I can. Start protecting who you are becoming. See you guys in the next one.
No negative vibes, only positive thoughts. Just in the game of life, mindset causes shots. Got my mind on the prize, I can't be distracted. I stay on my grind, no time to be slack.